It's the Lekker Rugby Pod, only on Megaphone Rugby.
This is episode 49 of the Lekker Rugby Pod. I'm going to be chatting to Harry about the first round of the Six Nations. But before we get to that, just remember, please subscribe to this channel. We value your support and we love having a chat to you, especially in the comments. If you have something to say, let us know in the bottom. So let's get back to Harry. How's Gary? Welcome back. It's episode 49 of the Lekker Rugby Pod. Lots to talk about. Six Nations. And let's start with the also ran Italy and Scotland. Start there. Tell me what you thought.
Yeah. How's it, NBA? No, it's good to watch the scene, the stadium full. I do think that the producers of Six Nations and the cinematographers, whether it's the French cameramen doing shots between the legs of the players or focusing on one bead of sweat that's about to drip from Intermac's nose, it's great fun. And you can see how marketing of the game really makes a difference, with the ball technology, the level of statistics we can now get from a game like Scotland, Italy now, which, even if maybe near the end of the match, it's sort of a laugher, it's going away, and Scotland's almost clowning. You get Finn Russell looking at his phone while he's lining up a kick. You have all these extra things, like you can actually see who throws the tighter spiral, what the speed is on Finn's passes with Sione Tuipulotu out. Finn did a lot more skip passes to Hugh Jones, and which ignited Hugh, the ex-Stormer, who was quite the player on and off the field. He was quite the player down in Newlands. Good-looking boy. And so he was having fun, and he almost felt like he was saying, hey, don't forget about me. I'm not just a product of Sione Tuipulotu's try assists. He can make a break. And one of the great themes of the Six Nations first round was bullet delay passes across the grain. So either a 9 or a 10, holding, and finding that moment where you have a streaking Hugh Jones or a streaking James Lowe and putting it on the money. And really, there's very few players better than that than Finn Russell. Now, he also got picked off. So what's interesting is, you give and you take away. When you have a player like Finn or Quade Cooper or Willie LaRue, you have they take a lot of risks. And they do, if you look back on their career and said, number of interceptions against, they'd be pretty high. But you factor in that it also goes the other way around, 3-1. So a hat trick for Hugh Jones off of passes that could have been intercepted, and then one for Italy that was. Brexits. And so I don't think Italy will look back on this game too fondly because they never were able to manufacture and construct a proper attack try from first phase or multiple phases. Hugh Jones didn't just play well on attack. He was a defensive monster, which Gregor Townsend was good to point out because he's had some problems being interested in defense before at the Stormers. Scotland did what sometimes gets you as a team. You roll out to a really early lead. It looks like you can just get the ball around the hold defense to Duhan van der Merwe, who can storm up the left, find someone on support on the inside, and go, why couldn't we just keep doing that? And of course, it'd be 76-0. But sometimes what happens when you do that and you get to 19 is you switch off. Scotland, as I think the great Hugh Griffin and I pointed out, have a problem sometimes in maintaining levels of intensity. And so that's all it is. Gregor Townsend will hopefully have the ammunition in himself or with his assistant coaches to avoid that. That's the thing they'll focus on, not the little interregnum period where Italy got the 19 points built, with penalty goals and the intercept. The fact is that Scotland should have won that by 45 points. And to be ruthless, to get to the second or the first position on the Six Nations log, which Scotland hasn't done since before Italy came in, they would have to develop that bloody-mindedness. Stop congratulating yourself for pretty good wins or pretty good losses against the Springboks in November, which Gregor Townsend said was the best game that they played. Scotland would have to be much more brutally binary. Did we win? Did we lose? If we won, how many chances did we take and how many did we waste? And so I actually calculated in the first half that Scotland legitimately probably should have been 35, depending on conversions, 31 to 35 up. They just squandered so many Bulls. And you wonder, if Glasgow had that kind of rate of success, then the Bulls would have won the Irk. So there was something wasteful about that display that they'll be worried about. And then, of course, they have a very tough opponent next. The good news about that is with Tuipulotu out and Sam Cummings out, like Scotland actually thought they might be more interrupted and disturbed by those losses, and they did play well. And the coaches sometimes do like to be able to show you footage, video, specifically where you say, look, we could have scored there and there and there. That's 3 tries that we left. Gregor said 4 or 5. I think it was 3 that we left on the table. And when you're coaching young men and you want to show them what you almost had, they believe you. It's a generational thing. They'll look at the vision, they'll look at the footage, and they'll say, all I had to do was run inside line there. Oh, okay, I went on the wrong shoulder. And so Scotland is a talented team. There's no doubt about it. And they're a handful. They will give every defense in the Six Nations, they will give them problems. And their defensive coach, Tandy, is not bad. You don't really fault the defensive coach for giving up an intercept try, right? So, he would say when he comes back into the coaching box, he would go, hey, guys, I didn't concede any tries. So well done, Scotland. You held your serve. You did what you had to do against a team that beat you a year ago. And so in that sense, coaches always say, we're better than a year ago.
That was interesting to me. The Van Russell, to me, didn't fire on all cylinders. He was a bit, like you said, watching his phone almost for the entire game. It's like wasn't really involved. Cheeky wing passes didn't come off here or there. I mean, a couple of those times that Italy actually were looking threatening was because a pass went astray from him. So that to me was a bit of an eye-opener. And I was wondering about Tom Jordan maybe going forward. What are the chances of seeing him playing at 10, for example?
Yeah, we talked about there's a tension amongst the 10s this year. It's almost like number 9 is really strong in the Six Nations right now, and number 10's a bit wobbly as a whole. You could argue for Jalibert over Intermac. You could argue that there needs to be a little more of Tom Jordan not starting. You can argue that Jack was the one who saved Sam coming on at 13-10, very much in the balance and then exploding to the win. So in the top tier of the teams, there's questions. I mean, even at England, you would say the same thing too, the Smiths. So I don't know what that means. Six Nations doesn't have any margin for error. So you kind of have to pick your best team over and over and over, except in some cases, in some years against Wales now or Italy. But for the most part, first 2 rounds, you're naming your best team. Finn Russell would still be the favorite to play 10 for the Lions. So I don't know. Yeah, there's really a controversy in Edinburgh. I would like to see a change of pace. And I do like the idea of a 1-2 punch. Like, I think Ireland uses that to their benefit by having 2 different fly-offs now and very different 9s. So there is a bit of a build a lead, take the game home, or, okay, chase the lead. And, we've seen that in Buckland. We've seen that with whether you name Williams, Pollard, or Lubbock, Reinach. I mean, there's a lot of different looks you can give teams. I think Scotland it's a simple trick, but hard. It's like the answer is easy but hard to do, which is stop losing attention. Like, pay attention. It's literally just, they need Adderall.
Interested. Yeah.
They need some pills and say, why do we always have this lull between 32 minutes and 52 minutes?
You mentioned Buckland there. Now, I want to make it clear. We are citizens of Buckland. We're South African Rugby Channel people. Never forget that. So first and foremost, we love rugby. We love watching these games overseas, and specifically Ireland and France, because that's a nice new rivalry developing. And also at the end of the year, we're going to play both of them. We're number 1 at the moment. Ireland's number 2. we've been interchanging that position for quite a bit right now in the recent past. But the point that I'm making is we are watching you guys with the eye of having to play. So let's talk about France quickly. It was a blowout as we expected. I mean, it was a bit bigger than we expected. We never expected Wales to be, kept to nil. But still, I don't think France showed us everything they've got in store for us. Just briefly, what was your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I mean, it was fun to watch, I suppose, in some ways, but also not. It's a good example of how when rugby is too loose, it's actually less interesting. So for the ball and play crowd and the we've got to speed rugby up crowd, and the only good rugby, the only actual rugby playing is when you have ball in hand and you're doing phase play. That crowd, that constituency, which I think spends less money on average than the true rugby fan, travels less, spends less on merchandise, is not the fan I think World Rugby really wants to indulge. They should indulge guys like me. Jeopardy is the real thing. Enmity, hatred. I mean, there was no reason to do anything to make the game between England and Ireland better. It was just when it was 13-10, when it was 10-all, it was magnificent. I wish it was stayed around 13-10 or 15-13. Then it'd been even better. So when you watch the French just pummel, eat, regurgitate, chew the cud, and then take a giant crap on Wales, is it that entertaining? I don't know. You have time to go out and get some more boerewors and talk to your neighbor and maybe think about cutting your trees, and then you come back and someone scored a try. So that's not good for the Six Nations to have such a bunny and just get chowed up. If you are looking at other things like shape of game, what is DuPont doing with the next DuPont law? We had so many DuPont laws. One was about the kick chase, and now there's about the space for the 9. He's got a slow pass, so we know that from the ball now. We have the technology. We can see that Jamison Gibson Park throws a much tighter spiral. It goes quicker. So do the Welsh scrum-halves, actually. So for the guy with sort of the floatiest, weakest pass, but the best contact running, DuPont is by far the best 9 in the world for being tackled and getting out of a tackle. And the vision of seeing a cross-diagonal kick, almost like an NFL quarterback dropping back and then hitting a wide receiver in speed. That's what DuPont's try-assist kick looked like. If you just instead of the kick, make it come out of his hand, it looks like Tom Brady leading Gronk into the end zone. And so it's really difficult to defend that, as the NFL has shown for many, many years, is proper pass route, spiral, and on the money, Tom Brady scores. It's hard to defend that. My thing about that is there was a line of blockers that were preventing Welsh not only from tackling DuPont, but even knowing where he was. And we've created a situation now where attack is really in need of life support. We keep helping attack, and we're portraying defensive rugby as bad rugby, dull, boring. That girl named Esther in the Sydney suburbs who could go to league wouldn't watch it, so we have to make sure that she comes back and thinks it's cool. Or the old man that has nostalgia somewhere in Lancaster that thinks if we could just have more tries, thinking misremembering the past. Anyway, I worry about that because if you take that to its essence, at a Caterpillar ruck now, the ref hurries you up, doesn't let you box slow, and doesn't let you have blockers in front of you to help your box. But then on that play, and many plays involving DuPont, because he runs laterally and backward, you had a line of Miafus in front of him. And so what is the choice that you have to make if you're the Welsh defender? Do you barge into Miafu, knock him over, and then hope the referee calls that obstruction? Do you go around him? Well, if you go around him, you're not going to get DuPont. But you've created a bubble from which you can do cross kicks, or you can do zip passes. So I wonder about that. That was a wonderful moment. It looked cool. It's visual. It's also a great rebuke to people that don't think kicking rugby is fun. It's beautiful. I mean, one of the greatest moments in the Autumn Nation Series was Joseph Akusu Suali'i catching a ball in the air and in one motion flipping it behind his head to a fellow Wallaby. That's brilliant. To me, that's visual. I think rugby needs to be up in the sky. It needs to have visuals and aerials and so forth. Kanan Moody catching that kick over Corabetti in Sydney and going to the house off of a beautifully weighted kick by Jaden Hendrickson. Those are beautiful things. They look good. So I don't think we shouldn't invent a game where kicking is out of favor. One thing I will say about Dupont's kicking, which is phenomenal, this is passing. He kicks the ball higher than anyone else. Again, that ball chip technology tells us that. Hang time. Unbelievable. When you can kick a ball 5 seconds in the air. If you have 5 seconds and you imagine that I don't know, what's Afalele Fase's speed in the 100 meters?
40 meters, 50 meters you can do in that time. Yeah.
He can get to a lot of places on the field if you give him 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3. I mean, Fassi's there. He's everywhere.
He's waiting for it.
Yeah. So I think that's interesting. The French are kicking long. Hugh, Griffin, and I asked the question, will the new rules and the lack of escorts create shorter kicks, more box kicks by the French? No. We know the answer now. Ramos, Dupont, and whether it's Intermac or Jalibert, because of the red card, they kick long. They believe in territory. They believe in net, margin. You're better off playing in the opponent's third of the field. That's where you want to be. Not just, red zone's hard to get into, but if you can just get in that final third and live there, then even if you only get 40% of the calls from the ref, you're going to the polls and Ramos is a 90% kicker.
Just on that subject of visual you talked about just now, that pass of Dupont, that one try, was it forward or not? I mean, I've been hearing so many different points of view. What was your take on it?
I love this idea of earning the call. Like in a lot of sports, NBA is where you have the most calls per second or non-calls by a referee or whatever they call it. And if you're a superstar, you get the call. Okay, but they call it earning the call. Like it's the 5 years before that. So Richie McCaw was a beautiful rugby player, but did he ever cheat? Yes, he did. Did he ever get away with stuff? Absolutely. When did he get away with the most stuff? Well, he got away with the most stuff in the final half of his career. So get used to Dupont getting away with some things and not being checked, because he's earned the right in the first 5 years where he was building his reputation. And so instead of decrying that, I mean, look, they shouldn't let that go. That was a forward pass. And they should at least look at it, right? He even got the right to not have it looked at. Is do more of it. That's why Leroux throws the 50-50s, because sometimes it won't. Sometimes they'll let it go. But I think if you're a rookie player and you go on the field for Wales and you throw the exact same pass, it's called forward. Yeah, sure.
All right. Something that caught my eye is the fact that the top teams have used the Rassie stuff, call it that, much better this year. Bomb squad, the timing of the bench coming on made a big difference in the Ireland game. The composition of the bench, everything else, that wisened up a bit, don't you think?
Yeah, but it's good now. It's theater. It's praised. It's not viewed as the end of rugby or ruining rugby or Rassie being too much of a gamesmanship guy and he doesn't understand the spirit of the game. Now it's cool. So everyone's praising it. So there's two ways to look at that, and one way is to think about the theater, the ominousness of running all those guys on at once. There is something to that. If you are trying to get your last gasp of oxygen and then on runs the bomb squad or whatever the French version of that is.
Le bomb squad.
It's scary. No, it's really scary. Like so everyone has to make a decision inside the pack. Am I the 80-minute guy this time? And how about you? So we got two of us that are going to be the 80-minute guy. It is scary when you do that and an entire squadron of Archis, Sneemans, and Malcolm Marx's run on. You might just give up the ghost at that point. But there's still an art to that, because sometimes holding someone back is smart. I don't think this game was in a balance ever. So it was a perfect opportunity for the French to do some theater.
I asked you when we spoke in the previous episode about, Wales versus France. I said, listen, but Wales are actually well positioned in the URC. And he was actually laughing at me for being too overly optimistic. And he was proven right. I mean, Wales was just nowhere. And it makes you wonder a little bit about the URC as a competition suddenly, doesn't it?
Nah, it's very difficult to do this comparison between clubs and test, although I'm going to do it. So today I'm going to do the Harry Index. I mean, I will consult the Oracle Harry, the disembodied, super intelligent, objective, subjective being. And what I understand from the Harry Index is that it is going to combine test teams and club teams and try to get to the bottom of this fierce debate between, is Toulouse better than France? Is Leinster better than Ireland? We're going to do that. No, I wouldn't extrapolate too much backward down to the URC. Clubs are clubs. 8,000 people come to watch in the dark in Wales in the winter. A team that the worst 3 or 4 players would not have anywhere and would be nowhere near a test side. They got a beer belly. They've got names that are hard to pronounce. No one's ever heard of them. So that's the problem. At test level, the worst guys are still the best guys that ever lived in their province, in their village, so there's just no holes. And even if, you see them sometimes at test level because, and we'll get into this with Alex Mitchell and Marcus Smith, you can hide some bad tacklers somewhere. They're still really good tacklers. So, no, the Welsh have problems all over the place. Right now, the Welsh have problems all over the place, primarily because the wizard they've installed as coach, the Merlin, he has no potions left. He has no magic. His magic has run dry. He doesn't know what to fix. He keeps preaching another day that if we go around this valley and that valley, there'll be the sunlight, We'll find it. And it's just darkness and rain and mud. And I feel terrible for guys like Jack Morgan, who's got to be one of the best players in the world. What a man. What an absolute man. And just getting pummeled. If you can play that well, when you're getting pummeled by the Wallabies, they're putting 35 points, 40 points on you. You're making Jordan Hendricks look like, Michael Jordan. Everyone who plays Wales right now, that's their highlight of the year. It's highlight time. So to be in the trenches like Jack as a captain, preaching and encouraging and doing your best, you gotta feel for the guy. And you also think, in the backdrop of the Lions, you think Jack Morgan, lion, proper lion, heart of a lion. So yeah, I wouldn't get too excited about extrapolating up or down. What I would say is that Wales needs everything to be different. I don't know if you've ever reached a point in your life where some things just are not going right. I love this one-act play, one-man show that Billy Crystal did once, where he talked about the cards you're dealt in life and how we all sometimes have this idea of, I just got a bad hand. Can I just throw them in and get 5 new cards? And for him, it was, he wanted to have his dad there with him his whole life. His dad died very young. He wanted his mom with him. He did have her. She got to see him present at the Oscars. He wanted to be tall and strapping and be a New York Yankees baseball player, but he was short. He wanted to be funny. He was. And so he just kind of portrayed that his life, just like all of our lives, have these ups and downs. My problem with Wales right now is they have Jack Morgan. And that's it. All the other cards are not good. They don't, there's no kings, there's no queens, there's no jokers, there's nothing wild coming around the corner. I really hesitate to change my predictions. I had Wales nipping Italy for the wooden spoon. Now I'm thinking, we made a bad choice. I think all my other predictions are fine, but I don't.
You and I have a bet going on that one, so don't backtrack now, Mania.
No, I'm not gonna. I won't back down. I'm not that kind of guy. I'm just saying. I think I just didn't realize how destitute the Welsh situation is. It's dire. I mean, it's almost like if they played the USA Eagles, you wouldn't be sure who the favorite is.
I wanted to just briefly, you talked about extrapolation. You're going to have to do, or not you, the mythical oracle. It reminds me of hell, this computer in the space odyssey, this kind of mythical being, all powerful. You must ask him, how is he going to compare Dupont playing for Toulouse compared to Dupont playing for France when you do the Harry Index, when you combine the tests and the clubs? How is that going to work?
Yeah. So the Harry Index does talk. He has a voice. He talks like this, eh? And
Is he from
he would
Pretoria?
say, Dupont, it depends. Does Antoine love playing for Toulouse more than for the French? I think he does. He always looks happier for Toulouse. He was always grumpy in the quarterfinal in the World Cup. He's been grumpy ever since about it. I think there's a brotherhood at Toulouse. I think there's beyond the fact of having a really big budget, which we always talk about. You have to also factor in that there are other teams with big budgets, and people are choosing Toulouse. And Blair Kinghorn seems to be happier at Toulouse than he does in Scotland. And Jack Willis, I mean, like, there's something going on there. And so, yeah, it's really funny. I'll have to ask Harry Index. And I think what he'll say is, at his heart, Antoine is Toulousain, and he's not really. I remember I was in a cab one time in Liverpool, and I just to make time, just to talk to the guy, I said something about the English football team. I don't know what was happening at the time, and he goes, "Up here, we don't endorse the national concept." And I go, "What? I didn't know. I thought everyone was nationalist." And he's like, "Nah, not into it. Liverpool's Liverpool, and the rest of the country can go to hell." So I wonder about that in the south of France. Is there almost a difficulty in knitting together all these different parts, and in a strange way, even a guy like Willis or Kinghorn might fit in better to the Toulouse band of pirates, the best of, the lovable rogues, and they do seem to have a lot more fun. That being said, there is nothing more theatrical than a presentation of rugby in Paris, the way they use the lights, the way they film it. And, from your Formula One love, a lot of it is presentation. Like, you can take any sport and make it better. We have a particularly beautiful sport, but sometimes we don't do ourselves right with camera angles and with the lights and the sound and the feel of it. And even against Wales, pitiful, pathetic, almost extinct dragon whales, it looked proper fun, and it's a vibe.
That lone piper on the stadium stand, the roof of the stadium there in Murrayfield, man, this gives me goosebumps. And when they keep quiet, when he stops playing for the second verse of that, to me still is the best. I mean, sorry, I'm getting.
I like Murrayfield the best. When I compare the stadia, I actually take Murrayfield for ease of access, getting there, the food, the variety of food. They have every kind of food there. Ease of getting the food, ease of taking a piss, no lines needed. Just go into the field right next door. The conviviality of the people handing you beers, talking, hugging you. The feeling post-match, the size of the chairs. I mean, Partingfield's great. Stade de France is not that great, but the visuals, the way they light the stands up and the fireworks and all that, you feel like you're in a rock concert, like a proper one, like one you had to pay, a lot of money for, because you had to pay a lot of money to get there for the rugby too. And it's loud. The French are very loud people. Their exclamations of anguish and disbelief, and the way they pour contempt on a referee, like no one else. It's almost like soccer, where they just really hate a call, and it's instantaneous and usually wrong. By the way, their opinion is usually incorrect, and it doesn't matter because they're so instant with it that you think it's a high tackle when it's not. The guy's hitting the ribs, and the whole crowd goes whoa, and the referee goes, maybe he was ahead.
Just to digress a bit on and stay on that subject specifically, I wish Loftus and Alice Spock and those guys would learn how to stage a game by watching these kind of things. That's what it's about. Not playing Sweet Caroline over and over and over.
Yeah.
It's about getting the crowd involved and getting that, like the noise. Never forget the URC final when they were playing Sweet Caroline in the final. If he can line out 5 meters from URC, from Glasgow's. I mean, really.
Destroy all the drama.
It's just nothing there. I mean, sorry, just my usual rant there. All right, you talked about theatre, and I mean, I don't think we've seen much better theatre than this game between England and Ireland. Game of two halves, lived up to all the expectations and exceeded some of them. So I want to just pass the ball to you, quite metaphorically and literally. Tell me what you thought of that game. Why did England do so well in the first half, and why did Ireland destroy England in the second half?
Yeah, I thought it was fascinating, and I thought anyone as a neutral who watched it was fixated by it, particularly up until the moment of the Sheehan try. Before all that whole passage before that was absolutely fascinating. Part of it's because you have different doctrines and styles meeting again. A year ago, England used sort of a similar gripping, stifling style to dropkick their way to a famous win. So this time they meet again, and Borthwick knows that Ireland is going to have some premeditation and workaround. So he throws the two Curry brothers in there, and they called it Twindaloo to have a play on the Curry. And Twindaloo gives you such a hard edge on the ball. And so focus on how in rugby something can negate another thing. So when you have Ben Earl, Mara Itoje, and the Twindaloo brothers hard on the ball, and you look at the stats and you say, oh, but in the first half, how did they go up 10-5? Well, it didn't matter that Ireland had superior territory, because they did. It didn't matter that it was even on ball, the amount of ball, and that the meters run was even, and that England actually had better carries, more meters post contact, more line breaks, more defenders beaten. You looked at the territory and you thought, yeah, but Ireland's going to win, and Ireland should be up 10-5 or 12-5 or 14-7. And why was it the other way around? Well, because there were 5 turnovers, clean won by England, and only one by Ireland. So normally you would see Josh van der Flair, Ty Byrne, and those guys, and you'd think, well, they will at least be equal and parity at breakdown. England won the breakdown. England won the breakdown decisively. So you could have incursions into the English half. You could sit there and be there. There was a time when there was 5 minutes in the red zone. Bulls flashbacks, right? I'm there. I'm doing it. Ben O'Keefe's not going to give you an easy penalty. Great ref. He's not going to bail you out and just give you a momentum penalty for being the attacking team in the red zone. He's going to proper look at things. If you're using Ty Byrne to grab someone to create a hole, he's going to catch it, or the TMO will, whatever, the team of the refs. And so what happened was England was hanging on. But don't begrudge them that. That's how you can win a game against a team that's better than you. Ireland's better than England. So how do you win when the guy's better than you? You got to not be proud. I'm not going to just match, hey, let's throw the ball around and let's see if we can play broken field better than you. Sam Prendergast's a pretty quick guy. I want to keep an eye on him. So they hit him a lot. There were the number of times that Sam got hit just post throw, just post kick. Illegal, but hard. That boy is wearing a lot of bruises today. So they corralled him, they kept him, they contained him, they hit things hard. They scored 2 proper tries. They built, and then they stayed, and they resisted. And 5 turnovers, which means you probably have 15 slow balls as well on top of that, versus 3 to 4 or 5 by Ireland, means that you balance all the stats and say England well deserved their lead. They did. It was not a fluke. It was not a mirage. Then they got away from it partly because they didn't have the bodies. Morrow, George Martin, Twindaloo, and Earl, when you add up all the tackles they made during that 50 minutes, was too much. I mean, you're talking about 90 tackles between 5 guys. And so then Borthwick made a fateful decision. He's had trouble with this for 2 years now. When to substitute, how to substitute. So he started with open-siders, and then he had blind-siders on the bench. Blind-siders are going to be good for you to hit Sam, but then Ireland brought on Jack. And Jack can take a hit. And Jack doesn't go on loop Sexton voyages. He kicks the ball proper, takes the ball into contact. He doesn't think that a forward can monster him. He thinks that he can handle it. And he can. He's a big boy. Conor Murray and Jack Crowley presents a different target. Jamison Gibson Park also opened up England at critical moments. And it wasn't because the English defensive system was necessarily at fault. I mean, what can you do with a guy like Alex Mitchell? You try to hide him somewhere. and Ireland's quick enough and smart enough to find him. But I thought the more critical moment was when, with no fault on the defensive system, something so beautiful and so perfect and so exquisite opened England up. And it was this. It was simple, over-the-top lineouts. Ireland had 23 lineouts. They completed 23 lineouts. 80% of them were to the front. So simple. They didn't do anything tricky. There was no motion. There was no over-the-top. They just went top lineout, set ruck with Henshaw the way you would with Damien de Allende. Just a hard run up the middle, slow ruck, 4 seconds. Jefferson Gibson Park takes the ball and he waits. And he waits for a formation to develop with James Lowe lurking, and he gets right behind forwards. I mean, just behind forwards. I forget exactly who it was, if it was James Ryan and Tyburn, big guys. And he got right behind them. And then with that delay, when James Lowe did shoot through that gap, right behind the shoulder, Gibson Park's ball hits him right in the belly. Perfect catching zone, in stride, and so he emerges through the middle, right up the gut. So the entire defensive system of England was up where they were supposed to be. They were connected. Every man could touch the other man. It was just perfectly timed and delayed. Now Lowe's off to the races, and he looks on his shoulder. He doesn't really have to look. He knows Tyburn is there. Tyburn gets the ball and goes into that galloping, piston-pumping, big man run, which is a joy to see. We love it when we see the big guys in space, and you know he's going to get there. You know he's going to get there because even if they do catch him, he's just going to carry them over. He's going to score. And that right there was the moment. From that point on, even though England didn't ever give up, and they scored 2 tries at the very end, you knew it was pretty much over. It's that fateful thing that commentators do, and they say, the next team who scores probably is going to win. And that was exactly right. So how did all that transpire? And so England doesn't have the horses to play proper blitz defense. Felix Jones brought the knee knobber, which is the 3 Bs. You blitz, which specifically means you have someone shoot out of the line and leave the line and disconnect. Supposedly, that's the wrong thing to do. For 80 years, rugby said you must always stay connected on defense. But the knee knobber effect is someone who didn't come up in conventional schools. He's a physio. He's a logician. He thought, no, but what if I have a Gary Ringrose at Leinster? What if I have a Faf de Klerk or Peter Steptoe or Jesse Creel who shoots and targets? That's the blitz, where someone goes out of line. Number one, it can sow mayhem. Number two, it actually saves the rest of the players on effort. So they don't have to all do rush defense, push, high line. They can hang back, and also they can loop around and start the fold scramble to the edge. So the minute Jesse Creel or Gary Ringrose shoots out, then Pollard de Allende starts sprinting to the other touchline. So because they know that space is going to be open if Jesse Creel doesn't meet man and ball, or the guy's able to flip it out. So England realized post-Felix that Borthwick didn't like that system. It offends his old traditionalist brain. And so he brings in Joe Al-Abd, who's the defensive coach for Oyonnax in Pro D2, currently sitting number 9 on the log of the 2nd division, and says, you're my defensive coach, which is basically saying we have no defensive coach. And what he did was he struggled. And so that's why they gave up 40 points to the Wallabies at Twickenham and lost, is they don't know what they are. Are they a blitz? Are they a rush? Are they a fold? Are they an umbrella? Are they a stick and move? What are they doing? We saw this time that what they're trying to do is an old-fashioned high-line rush defense where everyone does stay connected and there's no blitz at all. I heard Borthwick interviewed on a podcast, and they said, are we getting rid of the blitz defense, coach? And Borthwick said, we don't use that term. And they said, well, you know what a blitz is? And he said, I do. So we'll use that term for this interview. And then he went on to talk about it. And he didn't know what a blitz was. When he described what a blitz was, he thought it was everyone going really rush, like you get set, go, sprint. He thought, and you stay in one line. That is not a blitz by definition. A blitz is literally stolen from NFL, where you have a linebacker leave his defensive assignment and shoot through the line and try to tag the quarterback and kill him. And so blitz defense is an aggressive, high risk maneuver beyond enemy lines where you cut off attacks, you create a salient. And so even if Faf de Klerk doesn't hit a body at all, if he's in your line of sight, then Finn Russell doesn't know where to go. And so you create mayhem and you funnel everyone back into Ibn Etzebeth. So he hits you worse because you missed the tackle almost on purpose to herd you like a sheepdog into great danger. England doesn't have the lekker backs to do that with Emmanuel Feyo-Bosa out. They don't have any swivel-hipped super athletes who can do double movements. As good as those athletes are, the blitz defense depends on having, athletes like Gary Ringrose or Jesse Creel who just load. They're maniacs, and they can keep doing it. Mapimpi, the Butcher, Kurt the Arense, who can just reload so many times. England needs a more England DNA defense. So they've gone back to something that sort of kind of worked for about 50 minutes. The difference came when Jack Crowley came on, and unlike Sam, he used kicking more intelligently, started kicking more. And instead of just having territory, they had territory that mattered. And they found isolated matchups where you could have steamrollers, you could have up the gut moves where Dan Sheehan. A word on Dan Sheehan, he is just like Malcolm Marx in the sense that he's a hooker who can change a game. I don't know if you remember that, at the end of Kutzia's era, we get toweled 57-0, come back to Newlands and just about win the game, go from getting, losing by 57 points to being 1 point down, losing on a weird hit by Dialende on the All Black fly-off. And every single New Zealand newspaper rated Malcolm Marx 10 out of 10 that day. Like, he literally came out in the second, it changed the match. Dan Sheehan is that good. So when you look at two players, Crowley and Sheehan, you say, what happened there? And you look at the tide that turned, I think that's fair. And Borthwick admitted that Jack Crowley was the key to that win. So well done. Ireland's hard to beat. They look a little bit old sometimes on the bench, but they still just about make it. And I think Sheehan not being around was a big loss. We talk about the people that weren't there for the series against Ireland. Well, they had some people that weren't there either. So this is a really beautiful rivalry. To the Irish guys that are on now listening to us and contributing and chatting, I would just say relish the banter, enjoy the rivalry. Don't get too sensitive. It's fine. It's new for you guys to be in this echelon debating with the All Blacks and Springboks. And so this is how it sounds. This is how it feels. We want to beat you and humble you and humiliate you. That's what we want to do. Does that mean we don't think you're good? No, I think you're great. But the goal is to smash you. And we got to understand you first. So what I've done is gone, for 2 years now, I've watched every single Irish game, unpacked it, tried to find the things that matter, tried to find that 17-game streak. What was it all about? Verging on the obsessive. So don't accuse me of not knowing what I'm talking about on your team. I can go 3 deep on your team. Can you go that way on ours? I don't think so. But I still want to beat you. And the whole point of this beautiful thing we do about sports is the revenge. It's that niggle I saw with England and Ireland. Those guys don't like each other. And they made everything spicy and good. So please stay with us, hang out with us, bring your A game. But let's not get personal about it. That's beneath you, and I don't know, it's unmanly.
Unmanly. Oh, no, one of the things we were accused of in this comments you're referring to, the banter, is the fact that we questioned what defenses Ireland was going to be using. Leinster now using the blitz defense properly, being coached by the architect of the blitz defense, call it that, and how Ireland was going to react to it. And we told we don't know what we're talking about. Tell me about that. What did Ireland then eventually adopt Ireland as a team as opposed to Leinster? Was it the same? Was it the hybrid? What defensive system did Ireland use?
I mean, if there's room for nuance on social media and in vlogs, which is what we're doing, indulge me. I think there's some nuance here. Number one, you get more time at club. So Nienaber and Ringrose spend more time than than Ringrose does in the Ireland setup. And so it would be impossible to believe that the instincts that Ringrose has developed on being the shooter wouldn't stay with him and when he plays the game for Ireland, especially since when he looks around 10 or 11 players that he's with in Ireland, he also plays with in club. So the interlockingness. But Aki doesn't. And so a midfield combination with Bundy, Aki, and Ringrose is going to feel different. You know, that 12 and 13 and their relationship is a very fascinating one, rugby. It can veto or trump whatever Nienaber's told you or whatever you're hearing in the Irish setup. Also, I think we need more sample size to know that. I mean, I think by the middle of the year, we'll know more to what extent Nienaberization has occurred and to what extent Ireland is a Nienaber plus, a Nienaber minus, a Nienaber adjacent. You know, we always focus on the blitz part, the 3Bs, and we know the big hits in the blitz. That middle one's super important, the barge. And James Ryan talks a lot about this when he's wearing his Leinster cap, which is that no ruck is safe against Leinster now because every 2 or 3 times they're trying to counter ruck, but their counter ruck comes with a delay, not a counter ruck from the minute the ruck forms. It's that 3 second, 2 second. It's when the 9 is the most vulnerable and just decided to put his hand into the machine and then the machine malfunctions. So creating those awkward moments, also making the shape of the ruck so messy, Nienaber loves this, that the referee has no idea. And when you do that en masse, you know, it works. I didn't really see that against England. So I think there's a part of the barge that's different. I think the motion and the space denial and space offer, the fool's gold, on the outside of 13, that looks very similar. So I almost think they've got the blitz and the umbrella shot the same. I also think that England attacked differently than Leinster sees in the Irk, if that makes sense. So it's difficult to compare apples to apples there. There was a moment in England's attack where I felt like they had kind of found the nooks and crannies, and then they changed. So the minute they mess around with Marcus Smith and they bring him to ostensibly 15, I'm not sure it's a real 15, it does feel like everything changes. And even though they did score 2 consolation tries, I feel like there was a really bad lull in the English attack right when they needed to keep the pedal on the metal. You know, that part there. Would have liked to have seen if they just say to Marcus, play 80 minutes like Marcus and, you know, hell to leather. Just do it. I don't think anyone else was able to find the seams in the Irish defense. So long answer, but I think it's a fair one and a good one, is that we're about to see whether there's divergence. It's impossible for me to believe that there wouldn't be because you're in a different setup, but it's impossible for me to believe that Ringrose could deprogram his brain all of a sudden and not do those split-second things that he's doing at Leinster, which is working. Leinster is conceding the least points across all the clubs in Europe by a considerable margin.
You know, the other side of the coin is the coaches being different. Easterby being there as opposed to Farrell. We saw Farrell on TV sitting in the stands or standing in the stands watching the game. How much of a difference did you see Ireland under Easterby versus Ireland under Farrell?
Easterby's more animated. Farrell's, you know, a real poker player in the box. Loses well, loses graciously. Andy Farrell does. Cerebral. I always see him writing notes, like I would like to see his book. I want to go get there and snaffle it. Easterby looks a little bit more like from the Heineken Meyer school of real animation. That being said, to be fair to him, he must have been coughing up blood down 5-10. I mean, he was watching his future as a head coach crumble. I would love to have known what he did in the locker room. What was that? What did that sound like? You know, got a very interesting face too. It could be a character actor in Game of Thrones. You know, yeah. Easterby's his own man. So I guess what we learned is that Easterby's his own man, that he has good adaptation skills, that he's a bit more overtly fiery than Farrell, although Farrell was a fiery player. And yeah, must be breathing a sigh of relief today. I think there's plenty to dissect. I would think the Irish coaches are really happy about the lineouts, chuffed about the scrum, so set piece good. Not that excited about the breakdown, and worried maybe that England showed, not just with this game but the one a year ago, how to ruffle Ireland. Not everyone can put on like a Loftus performance like the Box did and just, attack blitz Ireland. But if you want to be a team that hangs in with Ireland and troubles them and forces them to build too many rucks, and, if you look at the stats on ruck percentage, it's very deceiving. You should almost view it, instead of looking at 96 versus 98 or 92 versus 97, take out the 9 and then just use the 2 and the 7 and think about how different it is. Okay, so England got 8 out of 10 rating on their breakdown attack ruck, and Ireland got 3 out of 10. And then you realize that, England won the breakdown. I think that's probably where it used to be, will be adding some reps at practice and increasing percentage. Most practices are dominated by set piece, forward packs. That's just what you can train. That's what our numbers say to us. It's how we design things. I would think that they're going to go in up against Scotland next year. So it'd be Rory Darge, Jamie Ritchie, possibly Jack Dempsey. Also, the Scottish use their hookers as sort of extra fetchers, like a lot of teams do. Yeah, I think Ireland will want to look at that.
Talk to me about Prendergast versus Crowley. You mentioned Crowley, but he kicked a bit more, and things changed around when he came onto the field. But there was a lot of talk about which one of the two is the better option to start the game with. And you talked about the Sexton loop around and things like that. Was Prendergast ready for this kind of game, this level of game? Is he not maybe a bit too young? Shouldn't they start, for example, with Crowley and then maybe bring Prendergast on a bit later? What's your thought on the 10? You mentioned 10 right at the beginning of the video. Ireland's got a bit of a conundrum there as well.
The variables aren't perfect, right? So even though I said market at 53 minutes, Ireland up 3, and Crowley comes on, and then the story is told, and you go, oh, look, that's true. Especially if you take away that final try, Ireland clearly played better under Jack Crowley. But it's not that simple, because other people and other factors were going on as well. And there were big moments of individual brilliance. Like, you cannot give Jack Crowley the credit for Dan Sheehan being involved twice, 60 meters apart in a movement. That's just sheer athletic brilliance coming back from a torn ACL, 7 months recovery. Brilliant. Good on you, Dan Sheehan. But that being said, it looks like to me Jack Crowley is the more finished article. He should have started this game, and then I think Sam's a great closeout or catch-up guy. On the loop, I looked at it again just to make sure I wasn't making up stuff to my Irish friends. He's taking away space. So the loop's too wide, and Johnny used to run a tighter loop. And also Johnny was underrated in contact. He didn't mind it. And so I think Sam's trying to find space. He's running that loop, and it's making him run into the trams. And there's at least 3 times I saw where he ends up team tackled in the trams. So where is his 13 and 14 supposed to stand? What happened was they would try to come in. Ireland has very active wingers. Lowe and Hansen both look for work. So then you have kind of a unpredictable mess. And if there's one thing that Ireland depends on, is the programmed ruck cleaning and recycle. So I think he's sort of, strangely enough, his attacking flair gummed up the works. It was almost like that sand inside the machine. I thought Jack Crowley, by being more predictable, by accepting contact more, and having good presentation skills and shortening the pass. I think there was a lot of long, loopy passes, then it went shorter. And the ball chip, I just looked at it this morning, and I saw that bears out. Jack Crowley kicked more, shortened the pass, accepted contact, and stayed out of the way of his outside runners, and it created more space all over the field.
Let me get back to that chip you just talked about and the ball. And I saw some stats just now about the number of revolutions per minute when they threw the ball into the lineout. And the speed was 25.8 kilometers per hour for the Irish and 27.5. I mean, just isn't rugby descending into statistic madness? Yeah.
I love it because I don't care. It's just like something for fun. Like as long as people don't take it too seriously and think that that's what will define it. Like I said, one turnover at the breakdown cancels out 10 good carries. So we have to understand that not all numbers are the same. I did find that interesting that Dan was throwing a softer ball at the lineout, more of a fluff ball, because I know at the Stormers we're struggling with that, and Rugby, bless his soul, keeps talking about how we're throwing, marshmallow balls. Apparently that can work at the front of the lineout. I mean, I was just thinking about it. JD Schickerling, all 6'10" of him. What if I lift him with another lock and I throw a little puff ball at the front? Who's going to take that? I mean, who can take that away from Marcus Snyman? I don't know. So I think Ireland wasn't too proud, just like Leinster wasn't too proud to stop taking lineouts when Dan couldn't hit the side of a barn, and they just did tap and goes. I think Ireland's greatest attribute is their humility for being such a good team. If they think we just want to complete the line out, let's do 23 or 23, and then you look at they were all to the front. There was nothing, hardly anything to the middle, which is supposedly the best line-out ball.
Zero.
And
Zero.
Yeah, and that's interesting because a lot of teams will swear and die by that and go, nah, it's not. It's almost like we're too shy to throw it to the front.
They threw more long. They threw 13% of their passes, of their line-out throws were long. 19 or 83% was to the front. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
It's either the back, the front, or the right at the back. Nothing in the middle.
Yeah.
And I saw someone make a comment to say that, now at least I know where Ireland's lineouts problems are. It's Joe McCarthy. He's too heavy. He can't jump. Or he can't be lifted, I suppose. That's probably what they mean.
I mean, Victor Matfield always talked about being easy to lift. Tiny calves, not very big thighs, Victor. Ran into him on a flight, British Airways, not too long ago, and I was surprised how skinny he is. And he could wear those skinny jeans, with no belt. So I think there's something to that, What's funny about the French is they don't even want their locks lifted. If they had Joe McCarthy, they would make him the lifter. And they love the idea of a long lift. So when Miafu and Flamand lift you, you're so high in the air. So you can turn a Tom Curry into a line-out target. It doesn't matter who you are. You can turn Quacha into a line-out because the lift makes you so long. Then as long as the throw is on target, yeah. Ireland, so I'll just go back to this. Ireland is adaptive, and they seem to be staying on top or near the top by adaptation. So when you guys who are especially hostile from our Irish contingent about questions, just understand that the questions are real and legitimate. Can you keep refreshing yourself and changing? And so the preliminary answer to that is yes, you can. Now, we don't know when you run into France if the territory game with long kicks works because Ramos and Dupont and whoever they have at 10 can kick longer than you. But Hugo Keenan was booming kicks. So add low to Keenan, and from the back you have 50-meter punt guys. Spiraling in some cases, negative spiraling. Sam has got long levers. He can really whack that ball. He's like a, really tall driver of a golf ball. And so, yeah, it's fascinating to see 37 kicks by England, I think it was. All the law changes you want to throw and emphases changes you want to throw, this is still a kicking game. And the team that kicks better has a huge advantage. So I cannot wait to see Irish kicking game versus French kicking game. You can call me a retrograde, that I don't want to ball in hand, ball in play. I just like to see a kicking duels. I love it. I think it's interesting to see who can do it. I think our television producers need to understand more about that and shape it better. There's a vantage point from which a scrum is more interesting than ground level, which is on top. There's a way, a perspective on kicking to really understand it. It's funny, on MLR, they have more on-screen kicking duels. So the minute you know you're in a kicking duel, they start to use technology to show the length and who's winning that particular exchange. It's not like, kick tennis. Like if you're at Kings Park in Durban, the whole crowd groans. Like, why did we kick? You looked at how England got up 10-5, Marcus Smith to Freddie Stewart, over and over and over. Let's say that Freddie gets three or four out of those, out of 5 or 6 kicks. That's the best ball you're going to have. It's fractured ball. It's behind enemy lines, and the Irish setup is not ready for it. So why wouldn't you do that? No, you have to build phases, 23 phases to get 50 meters. No, I don't want to do that. Give me one kick, forwards fresh, no one hurt. Freddie Stewart goes up 6'5", grabs the ball, and I have it. I like that ball. I like that more than any other thing. I like that. I'm more likely to build a try off of it, and I can get an incursion, and I can build a penalty. And it also does another thing. When you regain kicks, that next time you kick, the guy's even worse. You've seen it all the time. You've seen fullbacks that get beaten in the air, and then they just crumble on you. So no, I think that was a wonderful game to watch. I couldn't take my eyes off it. I didn't even know how to describe it, in the instant reaction. So I did my best. But it was one of those games where you could see it have gone different ways. England will definitely go away from that thinking we had something away from home in our grasp. If we could have found a way to keep Twindaloo more fresh and had another set of Curry brothers, come on. But instead, you had Cunningham South, you had big boys come on. And so maybe it was about wild dogs scavenging the breakdown. You just needed to have more of that old line. Maybe an Underhill type person comes on and it's a bit different.
Right. Lastly, you've said that this championship is going to be between Ireland and France. Ireland probably just being nipped to the title, or pipped to the title by France. You feel the same after this weekend?
Yeah, I think the French are better than the English. And so if you gave the French those same opportunities, I think they don't squander it. And it comes down to kicking. I think the best kicker in the competition is Ramos for Poles. I think there's more depth at 9. Legaric is not a step down from Dupont. He's different, plays different, but he's really good. I think he walks into a lot of other teams. I think the depth if you're going to meet at a certain round, and by that time you're going to have injuries on both sides, I trust the French depth chart everywhere more than the Irish. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, man. That was interesting. I hope that the point that we, number one, as an African side, that we're interested in Ireland and France as our potential opponents and some sort of our biggest rivals, and that we actually do know, and especially you do know what you're talking about when it comes to rugby.
Any fair-minded person will know that from listening.
All right, man. Thanks. We'll talk again soon. Thank you.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers. All right. Thanks, Harry. Have a good one.
It's the Lekker Rugby Pod, only on Megaphone Rugby.